If you are watching this video, then you've probably already watched our full-length documentary titled Faith in Action, exploring the impact of interfaith service on social cohesion in Sri Lanka. This is a companion video in which 4 of us discuss the 4 main conclusions that we drew from our research. We hope that this sheds some light on the academic side of our project for those who weren't able to hear our presentation at Eau Claire's Student Research Day. To view the full-length documentary, please click the link below. Thank you.
The first main takeaway that we have from our research project is that the current post-war context is a struggle for many people at all levels of society that demands negotiation among many overlapping national identities, political, ethnic, religious, lingual, and geographical. How Sri Lankans engage these various identities, many of which can serve as catalysts for conflict, could well port end whether or not Sri Lanka is able to establish a just, permanent peace in which the rights and opportunities for all its people are secured for the longer term.
So yeah, basically that point just lays out the fact that a lot of different identities exist within Sri Lanka, and those are political, ethnic, religious, lingual, and geographical, and
that's the historical context that they're dealing with now.
Right, and it's the context for the recent Civil War conflict and just basically lack of social cohesion within the country. And so how those identities relate to each other and work together is going to decide whether or not there is social cohesion within Sri Lanka.
Did you want to add?
I was going to say many of the people we talked to would say that this has been portrayed as a religious conflict, whereas I feel like from what I've seen, it seems more the roots go back to the ethnic conflict or dispute as to who actually has rights to the island and who was there first.
Mm-hmm. At least more so than the religious identities.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, it's not so much about necessarily having a problem with the person, but having a problem with the ideology and how they kind of go about the things they do and like the way they interact. I think we saw that, you know, they don't have a problem with the people, but they have a problem with how that other identity threatens their own. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And in Sri Lanka, there's not the historical separation of church and state. Right. So in a largely Buddhist culture, it's difficult, and they're going to have to decide what their national identity looks like. Because if their national identity cannot embrace the minorities also that live within the borders and have historically, then it's going to be more difficult to establish that permanent peace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's sort of what makes you a Sri Lankan. Is it geographical, or is it your religious or ethnic identity?
Okay, how about the second one?
Do we want to have someone else read that up?
Yeah. Okay. Specific barriers, many fear-based, stand in the way of interfaith cooperation and include incomplete engagement with the process of truth and reconciliation of wartime events, historical and ongoing political tensions between ethnic and religious groups, lack of awareness and education, including of the other, and geographical and cultural or linguistic isolation. The last 2 in particular were observed in the 2 villages where we carried out the participatory photomapping research, as both were almost entirely homogeneous in their ethnic and religious composition. That is, they were Sinhalese and Buddhist villages.
I think what we found when we did the analysis of the statements, the significant statements that we gathered, was that the question that we had about obstacles to permanent peace came up more than any other aspect of the context, so that the specific barriers were repeatedly underscored. by the people that we met and the people that we talked to. So everyone seems to recognize that these obstacles have to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of those obstacles are driven by fear, like the statement says. The fear of your religion changing, the fear of not being the majority, the fear of, you know, what will happen if we allow this to happen, and because of that, they put on the brakes, and then when people resist, nothing gets done, and you can't make progress when there's always that fear of the other.
Mm-hmm.
In Go to Tale, we did see an instance of, actually the man that I interviewed was telling me about how people from different villages, and they had a Tamil village nearby, they would actually get together on, say, a funeral, and they would all come together despite the person's ethnic or religious background. And I think that speaks to the fact that it is possible and that, like, these barriers can be overcome. I just feel like in everyday life, especially in these small rural villages, the opportunity just doesn't seem so clear in the forefront of their minds.
Or the importance of it isn't clear. I mean, if you're just going about your daily life and you have all these different identities happening all around you, you have the ethnic identities, political, religious, it might not seem apparent that you need to bridge that gap and that you need to reach out to someone of a different religious identity. And then, I mean, if you don't live in an urban area and you live somewhere like the villages that we went to, you wouldn't be able to reach out even if you wanted to, because they're completely religiously homogenous.
Yeah, especially if you're just doing the things you need to do to survive day to day, you're not gonna think that you're gonna need to go to another village to seek out these other people, because they're just like you said, the villages are so just one thing, and you're not gonna go out and seek that out if it's just not essential. It's not crucial to your day-to-day life.
And then building on that, when we did see interactions and interfaith, to me at least, they always seem to have some economic context to it, tying into like their everyday life for getting food for their family, or like sending their kids to school in a different village or something like that.
So from an economic or a social welfare kind of perspective, people want the lives of their families and their children to improve, and they don't hesitate to reach out to whatever
it takes.
Whatever it takes to make that happen, and that the ethnicity or the religious adherence doesn't prevent them from utilizing the resources that are out there for their families.
Yeah, one thing they have in that everyone there that we met, I think, had in common was that firm understanding of this is what family is, and you know we're all together. And like you just said, they're willing to do anything. And at the end of the day, that's something that they all have in common. Our children are important, our family is important, and they can come together on that level if nothing else.
You want to do the third one?
Sure. In this contentious but highly religious culture, many Sri Lankans currently recognize and articulate that interfaith cooperation is key if the country is to achieve greater social cohesion. With the four major world religions well represented in Sri Lanka, it will likely take the cooperative leadership of all the religions to listen to, validate, and integrate their devotees' viewpoints, to educate and motivate them to live by a higher law, underscoring common commitments within their respective traditions to mercy and compassion, peace and justice, as well as to those spiritual practices which inspire their ongoing value. These religious leaders can also best educate their adherents on the crucial practical advantages of working together across all lines of identification on issues of common need. From our own experiences using the PPM methodology at the village level, people seem very willing to interact and cooperate in interfaith context. According to the cultural practices observed, many even combine religious practices from more than one tradition, but they often lack the opportunity for more frequent or deeper engagement due to geographical and demographic constraints.
So I see this as the part of our conclusion where we realize that the first two bullets show us that this is the problem, this is the history of the problem. This is really the step where it shows the solution to the problem. And we noticed from interviewing a lot of different people that a lot of people really targeted religious interfaith cooperation as a really good motivator for introducing social cohesion on a greater scale, because religion plays such an active role in people's morality, showing them how to live compassionately, and really just showing them how to live with greater social cohesion in their lives and in the lives of those around them. So interfaith cooperation really kind of would set the stage for greater social cohesion, and it would pull in people of varying identities, because there are, within one religion, like Hinduism, there are different ethnic identities within that religious identity. There are different geographical identities, different lingual identities. So it would kind of work as the great equalizer, interfaith cooperation.
We also saw in our visit to Katragama and in our PPM exercises in the villages that the way religion is actually practiced in the culture in and of itself crosses barriers. And we were surprised, for example, that there were Hindu gods and images of Hindus in the Buddhist homes. And people readily said, oh no, we also honor Ganesh, or we also do these other kinds of practices. Mm-hmm. So they're already crossing those religious boundaries. And there are, opportunities and organizations in some places to make that more deliberate and more organized. So I think a lot of people we talked to said that seems to be our immediate best next step, is to work through our religious institutions to bring people together in a more deliberate way.
And it shows that it's already possible. If religions like Buddhism and Hinduism are already crossing over in some ways, it shows that it's possible, that people are willing to accept the concepts of a different religion, the people of a different religion.
The woman that I interviewed in the first village was a Buddhist woman with a Hindu name. So that's kind of interesting. Her name was Lakshmi, but she's Buddhist. So it's you can kind of see that there's not so much hatred there that they couldn't even name their daughter the name they wanted to because of a religious conflict. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the fourth conclusion that we articulated was the promise and potential of interfaith cooperation in Sri Lanka is therefore significant and can best be initiated when people come together across differences and engage in shared action for the common good, thereby unfolding a virtuous circle of internal and external transformation. Through shared action, relationships of friendship and trust can be built, and fear of the other can diminish. This movement toward greater connection and increasing commitment grows the courage to risk deepening levels of dialogue and engagement, which over time could transform both individuals and communities.
Instantly when I hear you read this conclusion, I think about our visit to Batikolo, which is probably the most affected place we went in regards to the war and the conflict. When we went to go visit that women's co-op where they made various things. I mean, it was people from all different religions coming together for a shared good. And when we interviewed them, they said that yes, every couple weeks or so, maybe after every shift or something like that, they would go and eat dinner at another person's house, even if they were from a Muslim family or a Tamil Hindu family or something like that. It didn't seem to matter to them. They all worked together. and then they all became friends as a result of that.
Yeah, it shows that virtuous cycle in action. So once people come together for a common good, then they can form relationships, and then it feeds back into itself because they want to participate in more shared action because they've built this relationship with the person.
And once they have an experience with someone who they may see to be the other, then they gain insight on what those people are truly like and what their life is like and what their experiences are. Whereas before, we saw this with people we talked to, they just kind of know what they're told about other people in other areas of the country and about the war and that sort of thing. And so when they actually meet someone and they share in the experience and they have a dialogue, then they get a deeper understanding, and it makes that connection. And I think that's really crucial, one of the most important things I think we found.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe within the country, those kinds of activities and initiatives and crossovers that are happening are really not being highlighted within the country.
Yeah.
We saw them as outsiders coming in, but a lot of those kinds of activities are maybe a bit invisible, and if people can, if we can find ways to help highlight what different community organizations and different entities are doing, those best practices that are happening could be more widely disseminated, studied, shared, and then people would begin to see that maybe we're not as divided as we've been led to believe, or that was true in the past. So I think we saw a lot of that gave us hope, and hopefully is giving the Sri Lankans hope as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to get back some very deeply rooted beliefs and cultural things that are just their cultural constraints, and they're trying to get past that. And like you said, it's that if you can highlight that, if you can show that, they have to. I mean, if it's their initiative and their idea and they want to do it, it's going to be much more effective than someone just coming in and saying, you're going to do this.
Mm. And that's what I think organizations like Sarvodia are doing, because they're
internal.
They're internal. They go to small villages and help them work together towards a common good. And we experienced that. Even as outsiders to the village, when you work with a group of people towards a common good, like when we dug the trenches on the sides of the roads to funnel the rainwater down the roads, or painting a school, you naturally and organically grow a relationship with the people that you're working with, and that creates a stronger village. And then if you do that on a broader scale and do it in many villages, that creates a stronger region and a stronger country.
Yeah.
I remember in Godotali, one of the men, I don't remember which one it was, but at the community meeting then at the preschool that we had, he was saying, why do we wait until foreigners come to get us to work together? We could do this every month. We could have a work group to work on our own problems and solve our own village issues. We don't need to wait. We can do it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
These 4 conclusions were reached by carrying out our participatory photo mapping project and by interviewing 13 civic and religious leaders throughout our stay in Sri Lanka. They were then incorporated into our final poster that we presented at UW-Eau Claire's Student Research Day. It is our hope that the work we have done will pave the way for more students, faculty, and staff from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire to take part in the endless research and service opportunities that Sri Lanka has to offer. To view the full resolution poster and to read more about our trip in greater detail, please find our blog at ifpsrilanka.tumblr.com. Thank you.